My guest is David Fetterman. He's the author of Empowerment Evaluation in the Digital Villages, Hewlett-Packard's $15 million race towards social justice. David Fetterman is president and CEO of Fetterman and Associates, an international evaluation consulting firm. He is a professor of education at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff and director of the Arkansas Evaluation Center. And David, welcome to Economic Perspectives.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
David, this is fascinating. In one sense, it's fascinating because discussion about the digital divide going back to the Clinton administration has been around a long time. But what's more fascinating is to actually have someone who worked with the public sector and the private sector to try to address the digital divide in three distinct communities and then to actually write about the results. Was this part of the plan when you initially looked at implementing this plan to work with low and moderate income communities to try to empower them through the grant that was provided by Hewlett-Packard?
Yes, precisely. It really is a study in resilience and self-determination. The concept was to bridge the digital divide in communities of color. And I'm not saying we were 100% successful, but we were phenomenally successful in some areas, moderately, and not quite as successful in other areas. But in each one, we were able to get small businesses developed. In some cases, they were so big that the head of the FCC even noticed, for example, the tribal digital village, about 18 tribes in San Diego, built one of the largest wireless systems in the country, and it got his attention. Same thing, very successful efforts in business in East Palo Alto, in California, and in Baltimore. So very impressive results, and the idea was to have folks in the community do more of the assessment and the program development themselves, but not totally by themselves, not abdicating our responsibility. Everybody jumped in to help in one form or another.
Now, throughout the years, I've been involved personally with a lot of different nonprofit organizations and have been involved in their efforts when funded by major corporations or major foundations to address certain challenges in underserved communities. What is unique about your approach to assisting these digital villages in Baltimore, San Diego, and in East Palo Alto that you think helped it to be more successful maybe than some of the other efforts by nonprofit organizations to address these kind of issues?
I think it's an approach that I came up with when I was the president of the American Evaluation Association called Empowerment Evaluation. And it's basically the same as normal evaluation, except that it turns it on its head. Instead of an expert coming in saying, I know what to do, I'll tell you what to do, and you do it, which doesn't work, you have people in the community be in charge of their own goals, their own strategies, and we come up with credible evidence with the donor, with an evaluator like me, a critical friend, and with the community members. So basically, it's building evaluation capacity and program capacity rather than just saying, I'm going to do it for you. A hand up rather than a hand out. It's often expressed, that way. But it makes all the difference in the world, because there are many foundations, as you know, that give a lot of money. They don't like the results. They take over, and they run in, and they take care of themselves, and they do a beautiful job, and it falls apart within about 2 to 3 years because there's no ownership. There's nothing invested in it.
If you're just joining us, my guest is David Fetterman. He is the author of Empowerment Evaluation in the Digital Villages, Hewlett-Packard's $15 million race towards social justice. One of the challenges often with managing significant grant dollars is managing the financial side of it and making sure that the way the money is distributed and utilized is meeting whatever the specific requirements are for that particular foundation. What kind of tools did you put in place for the digital villages to ensure that the money was being managed in the manner that the funders agreed to provide it?
Basically, it was completely open and transparent, and we also had a system, sort of self-regulation, where we put exactly what the goals were and the budget associated with it, what the baseline was, where they started, which is often zero, nothing in place at all, and we had benchmarks every quarter, and then halfway through, of course, and 3 quarters, and then at the end of the year, etc., each year, so that you know exactly where you are, both in terms of project goals and money, your budget. It doesn't mean, as you know, that you did it perfectly, because very often a budget is a good guess. And you realize when you're actually doing it, which this sort of thing is brand new, you're still discovering how to go about doing it. You're not going to be quite as efficient, so you make modifications in the second quarter. But you can only make them realistically once you have the data from the first quarter, and then you readjust expectations, etc., which means cutting back on certain things, putting more money investing in other areas, etc. But the key is to have people in the community be right there, controlling the budget, with assistance, of course, from the donor, from consultants, etc., and it's audited, the whole thing, because if they are not engaged in that part of it, that critical component, the fiscal component, you will not build critical fiscal capacity, which is required to run a small business, to run a household. So it was a unique opportunity to make sure everyone was at the table as a learning experience and a capacity building one, not just we're going to get this project done, gets done, and we all walk away.
Now, this was a competitive grant application that the eventual winners had to go through. So this wasn't an organization saying we're selecting you guys just based on what we think about you, but a number of organizations had to actually compete for the grant. What were some of the minimum requirements these organizations had to meet, or the minimum resources they had to bring to the table to ultimately the three entities to win these Digital Village grants?
The key was a serious outreach into the community. For example, East Palo Alto and East Baltimore had phenomenal connections with the local school system, so that we knew that they could also be able to distribute laptops comfortably to the teachers, to integrate that into the classroom and change the curriculum. That sort of thing was critical. Same thing with the tribal digital village, the different tribes that were in San Diego. We had to know that they were willing to at least talk to each other, work together, connect with sometimes the casinos, sometimes with local businesses, that sort of thing. They also had to have the technical expertise to actually write a proposal, which is no simple feat, as you know, and they showed some interest and commitment to technology. That doesn't mean they had to be technologically sophisticated. Most of them were not. Some of them actually didn't like technology a whole lot, but knew they needed it and needed to make the next step for their kids and their kids' kids down the road. So they were willing to take that sort of faith, that leap of faith that this is important. Those are the key aspects that were critical to have in place first, so that we knew that it have sort of the ripple effect, that we have an impact in these communities would have a ripple effect on other communities around them and other neighborhoods, etc., and other businesses too.
One of the challenges that you faced was in the East Palo Alto Digital Village. You had a community that was traditionally majority African American that was in some major transition. So it was a melting pot of African Americans and Latinos and Asian Pacific Islanders. What kind of challenges did you face with implementing the Digital Village with the different changing demographics of that particular area?
That was fascinating, and I still work, by the way, over there on different projects to this day. That was absolutely one of my best examples of sort of why empowerment evaluation works. Everyone knew that was an incredibly challenging situation, just like you're saying. For a lot of reasons, there's a lot of baggage, a lot of politics. Folks did not get along with each other. Pacific Islanders didn't care for African Americans. African Americans didn't care for the Latinos, vice versa. It was just a mess in many regards. So we walked in with our team in empowerment evaluation and said, we're not here to make everybody wonderful friends and family and all that sort of thing. We're here for one purpose, to find what's the common denominator, the common vested interest that each group has that we can work together on, not trying to work together on every single possibility out there. So we'd say, who's interested in improving education? Everybody was interested. How about housing? We couldn't get agreement. We're not going to deal with housing. What about security? It's not a safe situation for a lot of reasons at night. How many are interested? Everyone's interested. I said, you know what? We already have two things we can work on. Let's go for it. So there were phenomenal challenges, without question, in dealing with different ethnic groups and how they interacted because of the baggage they had in the past, and for the fact that they're competing with each other for very scarce resources a good deal of the time. But people don't realize, when you go into this sort of thing, you're not into to try to make everyone wonderful and comfortable and ignore all the past. You're just trying to move forward. and trying to improve the community and help people help themselves, basically. And that was a phenomenal challenge. But on the other hand, it was very simple in terms of how explained this engine that was driving is called empowerment evaluation, how it worked in the community, and goes sort of right past, right through a lot of the differences.
If you're just joining us, my guest is David Fetterman. He is the author of Empowerment Evaluation in the Digital Villages, Hewlett-Packard's $15 million race towards social justice. What are the biggest lessons, and I know I'm asking you to sort of put your great area of expertise in empowerment evaluation and try to bring it down into maybe 4 or 5 of the key components of empowerment evaluation, but what are the biggest lessons that you've learned from actually implementing this project in the digital villages that you would want to share with other nonprofit organizations whose leadership is looking for ways to be more effective in delivering programs and services to their communities?
Well, I have a piece in the Chronicle of Philanthropy that just came out about a week ago that highlights a lot of these things that I think are critical in particularly uncertain times, economic times that we have now, for nonprofits to be thinking about. One is to really focus in on what is your mission, what are you trying to accomplish, and are you listening to the community to see what it is that they need. And that means on a continual basis, because communities change, they evolve, demographics change, economics change. Second, aside from the focus on the mission, the reason I emphasize this a lot, and it sounds obvious, is that most of the conversation has been on protecting the charitable deduction. In Politico and other areas of the newspapers, that's been the big emphasis. And I'm not saying that's not important, but what's much more important is understanding and focusing on the mission and being in touch with the community. That's why I sort of emphasize that component. The second is to make sure you're monitoring and assessing what you're doing on a routine basis. So when someone says, what did you do for me lately, you have some evidence, whereas the other group does not have any evidence. Guess who's going to get rewarded? Very simple, just like a self-assessment in a performance appraisal. So those are the critical components of it. And the third one I think is very, very important. I talk with Kellogg Foundation also on a routine basis. Is we use what are called dashboards, and they're basically having the group come up with some idea of where their baseline is, like I was talking about earlier. Some idea, where do you want to go? What's your goal? My dad used to say, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And it's true. You have to have at least a vision of a goal or a statement about what your goal is, so you can aim and probably at least approximate it, and then have benchmarks along the way. Quarterly, where are you on each stage of the game, so you can see where you are. If you're not making it there, it's not a matter of getting slapped on the wrist. It's a matter of, let's tell everyone, let's share. You know what, I'm not doing well here. You're doing well in that area. Can you share with me what's working, and I'll share what's working for me in this area. It changed the whole tone. Instead of it being a competitive game, it becomes a collaborative one, which is really the only way a community can move forward instead of fighting amongst itself. And the incentive is that everyone depends on the weakest link. So everyone needs to help each other out, because we all sink or swim based on the entire package of how well the community moves forward in these initiatives. So these are some of the things I like to highlight from what we've learned in this process. And trust me, we've made plenty of mistakes as well. But see, these are the things that seem to really work, is when you give people a chance to experience and be part of and do the program activity or the evaluation, they're more likely to do it well because there's ownership and buy-in and take responsibility for it. And that goes a long way in making things, really happen.
Last question. How difficult is it to meld the differing interests and requirements of a foundation, a local government, a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and what lessons did you learn in terms of bringing all these different organizations, different sources of resources together, who oftentimes have different reporting requirements, different things you have to provide to them?
Maintain a really good sense of humor. That is absolutely critical. I'm sure you've had years of experience, and you could be pulling your hair out day to day. You learn to know the key players, and that doesn't mean always the official party, but often the informal network in terms of who gets things done in certain areas when you need that change at a moment's notice. And you maintain and cultivate that relationship in each of these groups, so that you have, in essence, a working group that is a core one that has a good work ethic, comfortable to work with for the most part, understands their needs and interests and rules and regulations, so that they can help you deliver what you need to them in the appropriate fashion, because they know all the regulations and specs that are associated with it, rather than dancing around and guessing and just going through the hoops for folks who have no idea what the specifics are, but they are technically in charge. So you have to learn the informal network as well as the formal network to make these things work. You also do have to assign people, staff to this, so that it becomes either a good part of their part-time job or a full-time job, because just coordinating all this is enormous, and it takes really a manager, someone who's interested in a phenomenal balancing act, very good at multitasking. Having said that, we've had folks that are not as good and some that are phenomenal, and they can both get the job done. It's just that some get it done much more effectively and efficiently than others, and others cause a couple more headaches than we needed, but it doesn't mean it doesn't get done.
David Fetterman, author of Empowerment Evaluation in the Digital Villages, Hewlett-Packard's $15 million race towards social justice. Do you have a website for the book?
Yeah, take a look at my website, www.davidfetterman, Fetterman.com, and it'll link you up with a lot of free resources, references for the book. We have blogs about the book by Stanford Social Innovations Review, as well as the Chronicle of Philanthropy, and our other books as well on empowerment evaluation. And videos, I should add, as well.
David, thanks for being a guest on Economic Perspectives.
My pleasure. You take care.